Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Former FBI Director and outspoken Trump critic James Comey is expected to be indicted by the Department of Justice in the coming days. At this point, it's not even clear what Comey would be charged with. Sources tell MSNBC that one component may be an allegation of lying to Congress almost exactly 5 years ago during testimony about whether he authorized a leak. And that 5-year anniversary is actually quite important here. Comey's congressional testimony at issue was September 30th, 2020, as you see, given there remotely, which means that the 5-year statute of limitations expires next Tuesday, September 30th, 2020. If this Department of Justice, the Trump Department of Justice, wants to charge Comey with this dubious crime, well, it needs to do so before then. Both Comey's lawyer and spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office declined comment to MSNBC, but this looks on its face like a wildly blatant abuse of the justice system, certainly far exceeding anything that we have ever seen since Watergate, at least. It's the culmination of an explicit, in the open effort to use the Department of Justice to persecute and prosecute Trump's political opponents and perceived enemies. Not for crimes they have actually committed, not motivated by some events or facts that come to light, investigations, not because of the facts or the law, but from a desire off-stated by the President of the United States to punish people who criticize him publicly. I mean, just look at the facts as we know them so far. This indictment is expected to come from the Eastern District of Virginia, and of course, that would be the same jurisdiction where prosecutor Eric Siebert was pushed out just last week for refusing to bring bogus charges against New York Democratic Attorney General Letitia James and for raising doubts about the investigation into Comey as well. Siebert was then replaced with one of Trump's former personal lawyers. Lindsay Halligan is a 36-year-old Florida insurance lawyer with absolutely no experience as a prosecutor, has never prosecuted a single case, but who is presumably willing to bring whatever charges the president wants, regardless of the evidence. This appears to be the reason she's being installed. Again, this isn't happening behind closed doors. It's happened right out in the open. Trump said he wanted the Siebert out, right, to the cameras. And then in a directive to Attorney General Pam Bondi that may or may not have been intended to be a private message, but was posted publicly, Trump wrote, quote, "Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old story as last time, all talk, no action, nothing is being done. What about Comey? Adam, Shifty Schiff, Letitia, they're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done." Adding, quote, "We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. President DJT." So there you have it, right? The sitting president sort of ticking off an enemies list, directing his attorney general to ensure his political opponents are criminally prosecuted. And our reporting indicates it looks like he is going to get his wish, and swiftly. It hasn't even been a week since Siebert was forced out as line attorneys in that office reportedly were in tears and distraught, as reportedly Bondi and Todd Blanche, the number 2, advocated on his behalf because they saw that he was doing his job the way it should be done. But now it appears Trump's new U.S. attorney, just on the job for a few days, has, like a magician pulling a coin from behind a kid's ear, magically found there is new evidence to bring those charges. Evidence that career prosecutors couldn't find. In fact, not just evidence career prosecutors couldn't find, according to a new report from ABC News and confirmed by MSNBC. Quote, earlier this week, prosecutors actually presented Lindsay Halligan with a detailed memo recommending she declined to bring perjury and obstruction charges in Comey. Now, in the context of the looming deadline and the explicit, open, public, and persistent pressure from the president himself, we are reporting the DOJ is considering bringing those very same charges against Comey out of that very same district where he has installed his hand-picked 36-year-old insurance attorney. And the history here is also worth remembering. Comey, a Republican, was appointed to run the FBI by President Obama. He is, of course, quite notoriously the guy who investigated Hillary Clinton's email server, the guy who arguably tipped the 2016 election to Trump when he announced out of nowhere he would reopen that investigation just days before Election Day and then announced, well, actually, there was nothing new. Comey's term as director then continued under the new president, where Trump quickly made it clear he wanted a very close relationship with the historically independent FBI. You might recall this video of Trump embracing a visibly uncomfortable Comey, which then prompted the FBI director to try and blend in with the curtains. Or maybe you remember Comey's retelling of a private meeting he had with Trump, where the new president attempted to use Comey to get the FBI to do his bidding, specifically to drop the criminal investigation into Trump's friend and one-time National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, who ultimately pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI.
On Valentine's Day, I was in the Oval Office for the first counterterrorism briefing of the new president, where I had a prominent role because I was to tell him what the threat is inside the United States. And I had some pretty hair-raising stuff to tell him, and he seemed distracted. And then, I don't think he asked questions, and then at the end, kicked everybody else out, saying he wanted to speak to me alone.
And what did he say?
He said he wanted to talk about Mike Flynn. And then, in substance, in that conversation, he asked me, which I took as a direction, to let it go. That he's a good guy. I hope you'll let it go. And I didn't let it go.
Comey was fired for refusing Trump's entreaties. He learned about it on TV while he was at the event for the Bureau. Comey has, through the years, been now a frequent target of Donald Trump ever since. Earlier this year, do you remember this one? The White House and Fox News attempted to manufacture a controversy where they claimed that an Instagram post by Comey spelling out the numbers 8647 with rocks on the beach was actually a credible threat on the president's life.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country has become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he doesn't.
Well, he
wasn't
apologized because he was
violence. But
look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen? What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing, and when you add his history to that, if he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop, and if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency, but I'm going to let them make that decision.
I'm going to let them make that decision. Those days seem to be over. And it was not long after that, you might remember, that Comey's daughter, Maureen, that was the woman who prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, was fired from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, reportedly as a direct act of retaliation from Trump against her father. In fact, Maureen Comey is now suing the Department of Justice, saying that firing was unlawful. And all of this vengeance, petty vindictiveness, is because Comey refused to turn the FBI into the weapon Trump could use to protect his friends and punish his enemies, which he wanted from day one in the first administration and is now using, right? His new Department of Justice and FBI clearly have no such reservations. Ken Delanian's MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent who will break the story, and he joins me now. Fantastic reporting here, Ken. What is your sense of what this process has been like inside that office, where you do have career folks, you know, I think probably pretty buttoned down, evaluating facts and law, coming to a conclusion? It seems like we don't really have a case here.
You're absolutely right, Chris. And so what Carol Leonnig and I have learned is that, well, first of all, the U.S. attorney who was fired, Eric Siebert, he was skeptical of this case. And it's one of the reasons he was fired, as you laid out. He was Donald Trump's choice to lead this office, the Eastern District of Virginia U.S. Attorney's Office. And he was a former D.C. police officer, rose up the ranks as a career prosecutor. So he's a real prosecutor, but he was also a Republican and a MAGA guy. And so he passed the vetting, and they put him in charge of this office. But when it came time to look at this case and the case against the New York Attorney General, he didn't think there was evidence to prosecute. And so essentially Trump forced him out. He was forced to resign. And then Trump gloated and said essentially that he was actually fired. And as you said, Donald Trump has replaced him with his former defense lawyer who's never prosecuted a case. And so she is intending to move forward with this as we understand it. But there are career prosecutors in the office who don't believe in the case. And we just learned tonight, after ABC reported it, we confirmed it, that they have prepared a memo to Lindsay Halligan, the new U.S. attorney, recommending that she decline prosecution because they said, not only can't we win this case beyond a reasonable doubt, we don't even have probable cause to establish that a crime was committed. That's the lower standard.
Right.
And the Justice Department manual requires them to believe that they can win this case beyond a reasonable doubt to even bring it. And so when I heard that, I thought there is some chance now that maybe this doesn't go forward. But our sources are telling us that the plan was to bring this before the grand jury this week. And I think the last day the grand jury meets is tomorrow. And so an indictment could be returned as soon as tomorrow, Chris.
On the grand jury question, I mean, one thing we've seen that has been extraordinary, and I've never seen it in the years that I've covered politics and law, is a series of grand juries refusing to indict in a bunch of cases. This has happened, I think, multiple times in Los Angeles' jurisdiction, where the U.S. attorney there has attempted prosecutions related to those ICE protests. It's happened, I want to say, almost half a dozen times in the District of Columbia, which is just utterly unheard of. Presumably, if Lindsay Halligan's going to get this done, they're going to have to go in and get a grand jury to, indict and run the risk of another no-truth bill?
That's right. And first she's going to have to find career prosecutors who are willing to take this case to the grand jury, criminal practitioners, because she's not one. And then she's going to have to find grand jurors who will agree to indict. And now, of course, we've all heard the saying, a prosecutor can convince a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. And this is a prosecutor's forum. It's a prosecutor's tool. The only evidence they hear is from the prosecutor. But perjury cases are notoriously hard anyway. They have to establish that he knowingly lied, not just that there was a disagreement on the facts, or that, Andy McCabe said one thing and James Comey said another thing, which is apparently what happened. But they have to show some kind of evidence that he knowingly lied. And we're not aware of that evidence. And if they don't have it, you're absolutely right. That could be the first bulwark here, is a group of grand jurors who say no thanks. And then if that doesn't happen and the case goes forward, the next bulwark, of course, would be a federal judge with a lifetime appointment who will decide whether this case meets a legal standard.
Yeah,